Hello, I'm Jagan from Grow with Data. Welcome to the Crack SQL Interview in 50 question series. In this video series, we will practice 50 SQL questions across various topics. You can use the playlist Crack SQL Interviews in 50 questions in the channel, and you can follow the videos related to this series. For each video in this series, you can find the accompanying code on the GitHub. Feel free to explore the code and provide any feedback in the comment section below. You can see the GitHub link in the YouTube description part. Now in this video we are going to continue with the topic related to the select statement. Let's see the data set and we can talk about the question in detail. So we are given a views table which has an article ID, author ID, viewer ID and the view date. We are asked to find the authors that viewed at least one of their own article. That means, let's put the question here and create the table. Okay, so what does it mean that the authors who viewed at least their own article? The first one is the article ID and the author ID and the viewer ID. What that means is, for article 1, the author is 3 and the viewer is 5. So the viewer watched the article 1 and the author is 3. So what the question is, the author and the viewer ID are the same. For example, if we see this article 2, the author is 7 and the author himself is a viewer. So 7 and 7. If you see the last two rows, the article ID is 3 and the author and the viewer ID is 4. That means the same author watched his own article. Okay. So we are asked to find the records which has both author ID and viewer ID are the same. So the expected output is going to be the ID of the author 4 and 7, right, which has both the author ID and the viewer ID the same. So the 2 points to be noted here is the viewer ID and the author ID is the same, is the first one. The second one is, you can see the author 7 got 1 record and the author 4 got 2 records, but still we have to display the author ID only once, the distinct of the authors. We should not have to duplicate the IDs. Okay, so this is what the question is. Let's see how to tackle this. Let's comment this out. So it's a basic question, right? So we just say select from views. So where we have to say author ID equal to viewer ID. So this is what is expected. When you say author ID as ID, right? Because they want to show the header as ID. So you put alias name as ID. And the main check is author ID equal to view ID. When you run this, you get 7, 4 and 4 because we have 2 records for 4. The second condition is we should show the distinct of the author IDs, but we have duplicates here. So how will you tackle the duplicates? There are many ways to do it. The easier way is just say distinct. Right? When you say distinct, it will get only the distinct values in the select statement. There's another way. We just say group by author ID. Right? So even that will give you the same answer. So what group by will do is, it will take all the author ID and then it just compress that into a distinct values. When you say distinct, every time it will work on a record level basis. Every record will check author ID whether that exists before or not. If not, it will combine to that distinct value. If it exists, it ignores. That means the distinct value will be triggered for every process. But for group by, it will execute the whole select statement and then it will group the data to get the distinct. So performance now it's not that critical, but no, in the initial version of databases, group by will be much faster than the distinct. So we prefer to use group by. Okay, so now if you say the authors who watched their same article ID, we can just say equal to, right? So the last 2-3 videos we used the where condition different ways, right? We used or, and we used to handle how the null values should be handled, all that. Now we just have the same columns, different columns, same table, right? Author ID and viewer ID. We just combine that, and since it's asked for at least once, right? The author viewed the same article, right? But if there is an additional condition saying that can we have the authors who viewed their article more than once, right? If you see 7, the user author 7, he watched only once. But if you see the author 4, he watched on Jan 21st and Jan 23rd. He watched twice. So how to find authors who watched more than once? So till now we have a where condition. So where condition basically works at the record level. So every record it will check author ID equal to view ID, right? It's at a record level basis. How to do a aggregation as a group level, right? So we have the group by author ID, right? So here I can just say a count, right? So when you do a count, what it will do is it takes the author ID and it will count how many times those records exist with the condition that author ID and the viewer ID are the same. So author ID 7 got 1, author ID 4 got 2. Now if you see, the duplicate got shrunk into one record, right? So initially when you ran the SQL, you got 2, right? So it get the distinct of the IDs and then it count how many times that record exists. So that's why the count star of. So instead of star, you can just say 1, right? Even if we say 1, it will just count how many times the 1 occur in the record. This you just put like 1 kind of thing and then it will count for every record how many times 1 occurs, right? So instead of putting star, we can put 1, or you can say author ID also, the column itself, and you can do this count of author ID. Oh, there's a 2 comma. Okay, got surprised. So even I can give a specific column to count. Okay, the generic is count star, but I prefer to use the column name whenever I use the count star. That's a good practice to use the column to be counted, right? Okay, so this is the generic way of doing a group by. How can I get the records or author who watched more than once? I have an output which says author 7 watched once, author 4 watched twice. So the where condition will do at the row level. I can't say and count star greater than 1 because count star is the aggregation. Where condition will work only at the row level. If you do like this, it's going to throw an error. So invalid use of group function. That means the aggregation function, like the count star's aggregation function, is used in a unwanted place. So if you want to get the aggregation function to be act as a filter, there is something called having. So instead of where, we use having and the aggregation function, right? That will work. So when you run this, it will just get the group by author ID and the count, and then it will filter only if the count is greater than 1. So you don't have to show the count here. We can just have it only in the filter condition, right? Okay. So the problem with this group by and having is you can't add any other field to it. If you add any field in the select statement, that should come in the group by. You have to show only the columns which you can group. For example, if you want to get the date field, okay. So if you see the viewer and the author 4, there's 2 different dates, right? If I want to see the dates and see how many times they watched as a author, how many times they watched. If I do author ID and view date and I group only on the author, right? I can't run it because in the normal group by, whatever there in the non-aggregation field, like this is count star, right? So this is an aggregation function, so that is fine. But whatever the non-aggregation function, that should exist in the view date. But the problem is, if you aggregate the view date, the record will split because the view date is different, right? So 1021 is one view, 1023 is one view, but I want to know at the author level how many times he watched. So here it's 2, right? How will I find that? For that, we have to go for the next level of function, which is called a Windows function. So Windows function is nothing but whatever the output window is. You see here, right? The ID, view date and count, right? Whatever the Windows output is, you can work on the calculation in that window. That's called a Windows function. So same thing, I don't have to aggregate. I just say, instead of count star, I just say partition by author ID. Okay, now you don't have to do aggregation. If I run this over, okay, there's a syntax error, partition by author ID. If you see this, what it does is, it just gets the ID and the view date, and in that output window, it will count how many times the author ID occurs, partition by author ID. Partition by author ID is, it will partition for, it will reset the value for every author ID. So if author ID is 4, it will just count, and then author ID is 7, it will just count, right? It is split based on the author ID. There are other Windows functions like row number, dense rank, and even the lead lag, which we have some examples in our other videos, but I can make a separate video only for the Windows function. But in our scenario, we just have the author, the view date. Even you can bring all the columns, the article ID and the viewer ID, right? But the count will work based on the partition you give. And then the syntax wise, you can just say order by AUTH author ID, and you can say view date, right? So you can give a date on the order part of it. So the order part will be helpful when you work on the row number and those kind of things, right? When you say order by, if you see the count, it will just do the count based on the order, like 21, right? 21 it takes 1, and 23 it takes 2, right? So you have to be careful when using the order by class on a need basis. So for our purpose, it's very simple that we just use count star over partition by author ID. You don't have to worry much about the Windows function. We can see in a different example, right? So we just get 2 at the partition level. Do order by, is going to be different, but for our case, we just want to get this. If there's a database which is Snowflake or Teradata, there is a function called qualify. Qualify count star greater than 1. If you do like this, you get 2, right? But MySQL don't work on qualify. So what we can do is, we can create a CTE table with all data as. So we can create this as a temp table, and then we do select ID from all data where count is greater than 1. So when you do that, all date, okay. So when you do that, you get the rows which got 2. As usual, we can say distinct, or you can just say group by, okay. So you get the result. For the required result, we can say greater than or equal to 1, but just to get the introduction of Windows function, I just said the example where the author watched more than once, right? At that time, you can just say greater than 1, right? Okay. But for our basic question of find the authors who have at least one of their own article. That means the simple example is count star where author equal to this and this, right? We can have the basic condition. Author did this. So this is what we saw, right? We don't have to use the count star and all. Author where this and say distinct. So these are all our extra learnings which is outside the question. The question they asked, we just have to say select distinct of author ID where the author ID equal to view ID. The distinct will remove the duplicates and you get the expected result. So when you say 4 and 7 because it's ordered based on the ID, order by ID, right? And small catch here is you don't have to put the column name. You can just give the position of the column. Like order ID is the first column, so say order by 1. Even the group by you can do the same, right? So the question is simple, but there are many things which adds up to it. How to use aggregate function, how to use a Windows function, what's the importance of partition, what's the importance of order by in the partition, and how to use distinct, how to use group by, right? Hope you like this video and thanks for watching.